Good morning, students. I am Dr. Damodari. Welcome to the pharmacology class. Today's topic is non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. So this topic is a very big topic. I have divided it into two parts. Today I will cover the part 1. Coming to the topic, these non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs are the drugs used for the inflammation. They are having the properties of analgesic, antipyretic and anti-inflammatory properties. So the main anti-inflammatory drugs are the steroids. These are the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. And these non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs are also known as non-opioid analgesics. Why? Because opioid analgesics are the potent analgesics than non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. And they are also known as non-narcotic analgesics or aspirin-like drugs. So all these are the alternate names for the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. The bark of willow is used for many centuries for the relief of pain and for the treatment of the fever. Later in 1829, Lorex isolated active principle of the bark in pure form, and the pure form name is salicylene. This salicylene was converted into glucose and salicylic alcohol on hydrolysis, and the salicylic alcohol is converted into salicylic acid in the body, and this salicylic acid is the active principle used for the treatment of the pain and fever. In 1875, sodium salicylate is used for the treatment of rheumatic fever because of its uricosuric effect. This sodium salicylate is also used for the treatment of the gout. And Hoffman synthesis the acetyl salicylic acid. Hoffman is a chemist. He synthesized the acetyl salicylic acid. And in the year 1899, Dresser introduced it as aspirin. The other name for the acetyl salicylic acid is aspirin. In the year 1963, the other non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like paracetamol and indomethacin were introduced. And the latest analgesics are the COX-2 inhibitors. Those are celecoxib, etoricoxib, rifacoxib, etc. And coming to the mechanism of action of non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, the mechanism was first demonstrated by the Van and co-workers and Smith and Willis in 1971. These non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, they will inhibit the cyclooxygenase enzyme. This cyclooxygenase enzyme is responsible for the synthesis of prostaglandins and other autocoids. What are autocoids? Autocoids are the local hormones. They synthesized at the site and they will act at the same site of the synthesis. So they are known as autocoids. And this cyclooxygenase enzyme is of two types: cyclooxygenase enzyme 1 and cyclooxygenase enzyme 2. This cyclooxygenase enzyme 1 is physiological and it is present in many cells and platelets, and it is involved in tissue homeostasis. Whereas COX-2, it is pathological and it is induced in inflammatory cells, and it is activated by cytokines, interleukin-1 and human necrosing factor alpha. All these are the inflammatory cells, and it causes the production of prostaglandins. These prostaglandins are responsible for the inflammation, fever and other pathological changes. So these NSAIDs, they will inhibit the COX enzyme. Some of the anti-inflammatory drugs, they will inhibit both COX-1 and 2, and the selective COX-2 inhibitors, they will inhibit only the COX-2 enzyme. This is the flow chart. Whenever the tissue injury occurs from the dietary essential fatty acids. The membrane phospholipids are released, and these phospholipids, with the help of the phospholipase Na2, converted into arachidonic acid. Here, the steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, they will inhibit corticosteroids, they will inhibit the phospholipase A2 enzyme, and there will not be production of arachidonic acid. Whereas this arachidonic acid is converted into two pathways, cyclooxygenase pathway and lipoxygenase pathway. With the help of the cyclooxygenase pathway, the cyclooxygenase enzyme will convert the arachidonic acid into prostaglandin G2, and lipoxygenase, the help of the lipoxygenase enzymes, this arachidonic acid is converted into hydroperoxides, and from hydroperoxides, leukotrienes are synthesized. And whereas from the prostaglandin Z2, the other prostaglandins are synthesized. This prostaglandin Z2 is converted into prostaglandin H2, and from the H2, prostaglandin I2, F2 alpha, prostaglandin D2, E2, and thromboxane A2 are synthesized. This is the pathway of the synthesis of the prostaglandins. So the NSAIDs will inhibit the conversion of arachidonic acid into prostaglandins by inhibiting the COX-1 and COX-2 enzymes. And these NSAIDs, majority of them, they will inhibit both enzymes, COX-1 and COX-2. So they will lead to various side effects. Whereas the selective COX-2 inhibitors, they will inhibit only COX-2 enzyme. So with the selective COX-2 inhibitors, the adverse effects are, side effects are less. Example for selective COX-2 inhibitors are celecoxib, etoricoxib, reficoxib, etc. And there is another enzyme, COX-3 is also present, but it is not present in the humans. It is present in the canine cortex, and it is also inhibited by the paracetamol. And all NSAIDs, they will have analgesic activity, whereas majority of them are having antipyretic activity, but they will vary in their anti-inflammatory action. And most of the NSAIDs are organic acids, whereas nebumetone, it is not an organic acid. Except nebumetone, all the NSAIDs are organic acids, and they are available as over-the-counter drugs. Coming to the classification of non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, depending upon the selectivity of the COX-2 and anti-inflammatory activity and chemical nature, they are classified as non-selective COX inhibitors. Under non-selective COX inhibitors, we'll have the drugs like drugs with analgesic and marked anti-inflammatory action. Under this, the drugs are salicylates, that is aspirin, benorelate, and diflunicil. And pyrazolone derivatives are phenylbutazone and oxyphenbutazone. And the acetic acid derivatives are diclofenac and aceclofenac, tolmetin, ketorolac. Coming to the indole derivatives are indomethacin and sulindac. Enolic acid derivatives are oxycum, peroxycum, tinoxycum, lornoxycum, benzotriazine, and azapropazone. Coming to the drugs with analgesic and moderate anti-inflammatory action are propionic acid derivatives. Those are ibuprofen, phenoprofen, flurbiprofen, naproxen. And the anthranylic acid derivatives are, these are also known as phenamates, mefenamic acid and meclofenac acid. Coming to the drugs with analgesic and negligible anti-inflammatory activity are para-aminophenol derivatives, that is paracetamol. The other name for paracetamol is acetaminophen. And coming to the selective COX-2 inhibitors, These are partially selective or preferential COX-2 inhibitors and selective COX-2 inhibitor. The drugs comes under preferential COX-2 inhibitors are sulfonilamide, sulfonilides, that is nimesulide, oxycum, meloxicam, alkanones are non-acidic drugs, nabumetone, and indole acetic acid derivative, etodolac, and propionic acid derivative, zoltoprofen. And coming to the selective COX-2 inhibitors are celecoxib, etoricoxib, pericoxib, lumiracoxib, and relicoxib. These are the selective COX-2 inhibitors. And the miscellaneous group of drugs are flupirtin, phenyl dimethyl pyrazolone. The other name for the phenyl dimethyl pyrazolone is enalzine, metamizole, propifenazone, nefopam, and diacerin. These nefopam and diacerin, these are also known as atypical non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. And coming to the COX-2 selectivity is, COXIBs are more selective to COX-2 enzyme when compared to preferential COX-2 inhibitors. And preferential COX-2 inhibitors are more potent COX-2 inhibitors than non-steroidal, non-selective, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. The common therapeutic effects and side effects or toxic effects of the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs are due to inhibition of prostaglandin synthesis. So the common therapeutic effects are all the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, they are having analgesic property, antipyretic property, and anti-inflammatory property, and all of them are, they will relieve the dysmenorrhea, pain during the menstruation. This dysmenorrhea is because of the prostaglandins secreted by the endometrium. So all these are the therapeutic effects of the common therapeutic effects of the all non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. And coming to the side effects or toxic effects of the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs are on GIT. They will have side effects on the GIT. They cause mucosal irritation and damage and bleeding. Why? Because all these drugs are acidic in nature. They are more absorbed in the stomach and upper part of the small intestine, and because of their acidic nature, because of the presence of acid in the stomach, they are more absorbed and they are converted into unionized form and fastly absorbed into the gastric mucosal cells, and the pH of the gastric mucosa is 7.4. So these particles, they are converted into ionized form, and in the pH of 7.4, they are converted into ionized form, and they will not enter into the outside of the cell. So they will stay for longer time at the gastric mucosal epithelial cells, and they will cause irritation of the gastric mucosa, and they will damage the gastric mucosa and causes bleeding. And coming to the next adverse effect or the toxic effect is hypersensitivity and anaphylactoid reactions. They may cause asthma, rhinitis, urticaria, and angioneurotic edema. And they will cause renal toxicity if they are used for prolonged periods. And if they are used in mixed analgesic combinations, they will cause the renal toxicity. The renal epithelial cells, they will secrete prostaglandins, especially prostaglandin I2, and this is helpful for the perfusion of the renal tubules. If we use the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, they will inhibit the prostaglandin synthesis and they will cause the renal tubular damage and cause the renal toxicity and increased cardiovascular toxicity because of the inhibition of the thromboxane A2. The antiplatelet activity is not present and they will cause the thrombosis and heart attacks. All these are the common side effects or toxic effects of the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. And coming to the effects, which may be both therapeutic and side effect depending upon the condition. And effect on platelets. They are having the, and they will inhibit the at low doses, these non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. That is example, aspirin. It will inhibit the platelet aggregation by inhibiting the thromboxane A2 enzyme. And so useful in the treatment of the myocardial infarction and post-stroke patients. And at the same time, these NSAIDs, they will prolong the bleeding time in other patients. So, effect on ductus arteriosus. These drugs, they will help in the closure of the ductus arteriosus after the birth. And if they are used at the last trimester or during labor, the early closure of the ductus arteriosus will happen. It is the side effect. And coming to the other use, effect on labor. If they previously they are used for the prevention of the premature labor, and at the same time they will, if they used during the labor, they will prolong the labor by inhibiting the prostaglandins. These are the therapeutic effects and side effects of the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. And coming to these salicylate, aspirin is taken as the prototype of drug, and the pharmacological actions and therapeutic uses and adverse drug effects of the salicylates are taken as the prototype of drug example for the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. Aspirin, the aspirin is known as acetyl salicylic acid. It is a prodrug. Acetyl salicylic acid, and it is available as sodium salicylate. Aspirin, it is converted into salicylic acid and it acetylates the certain enzymes like cyclooxygenase. And the coming to the mechanism of action of the salicylic acid is, it will inhibit the cyclooxygenase enzyme by inhibiting the both cyclooxygenase 1 and cyclooxygenase 2. It will inhibit it is a non-selective COX enzyme inhibitor. So coming to the pharmacological actions, it exhibits the analgesic effect. The pain is caused by the interleukins like interleukin 1, tumor necrosis factor alpha, and bradykinins. And these interleukins, they will induce the synthesis of the prostaglandins. And pain is induced by direct application of induced by the direct application of the prostaglandins is not blocked by the NSAIDs. The pain caused by the inflammatory cells only subsided by the aspirin. They are mainly effective against somatic pain and pain due to inflammation. And coming to the antipyretic effect. The body temperature is regulated by balance between the production of heat and heat lost. The set point to maintain body temperature is regulated by the hypothalamus. In fever, what happened? The set point is raised and the NSAIDs bring down the raised body temperature but do not reduce the normal body temperature and exercise induced body temperature. These will inhibit only the raised body temperature because of the inflammatory cells only. This fever is due to increased formation of cytokines such as interleukin 1 and interleukin 6 and interferons alpha and beta and tumor necrosing factors. So coming to the anti-inflammatory effect. The inflammation is a complex pathological process caused by the tissue trauma, infection, allergic conditions, and ischemia, and dermal and other types of the physical injury. It leads to series of vasoactive and chemotactic and proliferative events due to the synthesis of the prostaglandins and leukotrienes and platelet activating factor alpha. So these NSAIDs, by inhibiting the synthesis of the prostaglandins, they will exhibit their inflammatory effect. And this paracetamol has negligible anti-inflammatory action because it inhibits the prostaglandin synthesis only in the CNS. And there is no peripheral effect because of the presence of the increased levels of peroxidases at the site of inflammation. Peripherally, at the site of inflammation, there will be increased levels of the peroxidase enzyme. So in presence of peroxidase, the paracetamol will not show its anti-inflammatory effect. And coming to the antiplatelet effect. The platelets, they will have thromboxane, A2, and aspirin at lower doses, that is 50 to 150 milligrams per day. It will inhibit the enzyme present in the platelets, and it will help as it has the antiplatelet activity, and also the antiplatelet at the endothelial cells, they will synthesize prostaglandin I2, and this prostaglandin I2 will help the antiplatelet activity of the platelets. So when the aspirin is used at higher doses, it will inhibit the prostaglandin synthesis of PGI2 by the endothelial cells. So there will not be any antiplatelet activity if the aspirin is used at higher doses. And coming to the effect on uric acid excretion. At low doses, it shows hypouricemia. At low doses, it will increases the uric acid levels by inhibits the renal tubular excretion. And at higher doses, it shows the hypouricemia by decreasing the renal tubular reabsorption. But at higher doses, aspirin will show the hypouricemia, but this is not used for the treatment of the gout. And coming to its effects on it shows the hypoproteinemia by inhibiting it competes with the vitamin K and reduces the vitamin K level, and it will causes the hypoproteinemia. And effects on the GIT, the gastric mucosal irritation and mucosal erosion will occur because these drugs are acidic in nature, and they will stay at longer time in the gastric epithelial cells, and they will irritate the gastric epithelium. And the gastric epithelial cells, normal cells, they will secrete the prostaglandins, which are important for the decreased secretion of the gastric acid and increased blood perfusion. Because these non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, they will inhibit the prostaglandin synthesis, so there will not be any prostaglandins. The protective mechanisms exhibited by the prostaglandins are lost in the GIT, so they will show gastric erosion and gastric ulceration. And the next pharmacological action is effect on respiration and acid electrolytes, acid base and electrolytes. In anti-inflammatory doses, there is increased oxygen consumption by the peripheral tissue, and because of the increased oxygen consumption, there will be increased production of the carbon dioxide. So this increased carbon dioxide, it will stimulate the respiratory center and increase respiratory rate. Because of the increased respiratory rate, the carbon dioxide is washed out, and it will leads to respiratory alkalosis. What happened when the respiratory alkalosis occurs? The bicarbonate ions are excreted by the kidney. Along with the bicarbonate ions, sodium, potassium, and water is also excreted. And this is the stage of compensated respiratory alkalosis. The respiratory alkalosis is compensated by the excretion of the bicarbonate ions and sodium, potassium, and water by the kidney. And and at higher doses, this compensated respiratory alkalosis is inhibited because of it stimulates the respiratory center. It inhibits the respiratory center. So the compensated respiratory alkalosis stage is lost if aspirin is used at the higher doses. And at higher doses, it causes the metabolic acidosis and it will shows circulatory collapse due to depression of the vasomotor center. And coming to the local actions, aspirin shows keratolytic and antiseptic and fungistatic activity. And this aspirin, it do not irritate the unbroken skin, but when ingested, salicylic acid causes the local gastric irritation. And coming to the pharmacokinetics of the aspirin, it is well absorbed through the intact skin, stomach, and upper small intestine. And the factors which modify the absorption are particle size. If the particles are smaller, the absorption is more, and pH of the gut. This aspirin is acidic in nature. It will absorb acidic drugs, absorb more at acidic pH. And depending upon the pH, the absorption is more in the stomach and upper small intestine, and it is low at the other parts of the intestine. And the solubility of the salicylate preparations and the presence of food will modify the absorption of the drug. In single therapeutic dose, it is absorbed within 30 minutes and the peak plasma concentration levels will reach within 2 hours. And 50% of the dose is eliminated in urine within 24 hours and 50% of the drug is bound to the plasma proteins. Because it is a strict drug, it will bound to the basic proteins, that is alpha glycoprotein. And it is distributed in the most of the tissues and significant concentrations are found in the saliva, milk, spinal fluid, synovial fluid, peritoneal fluid, and erythrocytes. And higher concentrations are present in the liver, heart, and muscle, and the aspirin concentrations are very less in the brain. And coming to the kinetics of elimination, it follows dose-dependent elimination. That is, at lower doses, it follows the first order kinetics, and at higher doses, it follows the zero order kinetics. First order kinetics means if you increase the dose, the drug excreted is also increased, and whereas at zero order kinetics, fixed dose of the drug only eliminates because of the saturations of the enzymes responsible for the metabolism. And it is de-acetylated in the gut wall, liver, and other tissues to salicylic acid, that is active form. It is a prodrug. It is de-acetylated in the gut wall, liver, and other tissues to salicylic acid, and it crosses the placenta. And the plasma half-life of anti-inflammatory dose is 8 to 12 hours. And in poisoning, the half-life will increase to up to 30 hours. And coming to the adverse effects of the acetyl salicylic acid, that is aspirin, because it causes the gastric irritation and it causes the gastric ulcers and erosions. It has to be taken with plenty of water, or it has to be taken after food, or with milk, or with an alkali. This misoprostol is having ulcer protective activity. And coming to the next adverse effect, it causes the salicylism, acute salicylism. If the plasma levels exceeds 25 mg/%, it shows the salicylism. The signs and symptoms of the salicylism are: the patient will suffer with dizziness, vertigo, tinnitus, difficulty in hearing, diminution of vision, drowsiness, lethargy, and mental confusion. The tinnitus, the symptom tinnitus will appear first whenever the acetyl salicylic acid concentrations are increased. The first symptom appeared is tinnitus. Then this causes the nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea, and this may be associated with the tachypnea and respiratory alkalosis. And it causes the Ray's syndrome, especially when it is treated in the children. If the children are infected with the viral infections, so what happened? This aspirin, it causes the Ray's syndrome. That is, there will be fatty infiltration into the liver, and it leads to the acute encephalopathy. And this aspirin may cause the hypersensitivity and idiosyncratic reactions. And if we use the aspirin for prolonged periods and with larger doses, it causes the hepatic and renal damage. The renal damage is because of the inhibition of the prostaglandins at the renal tubules. It will cause the renal tubular damage. So the dose has to be reduced in hepatic and renal diseases. And coming to the signs and symptoms of the acute salicylate intoxication. If the serum levels exceeds 50%, 50 milligram percent, there will be the mild toxicity occurs. And if it is more than 75 milligram percent, the fatal changes will occur, and there will be acid base and electrolyte disturbances, and there will be hyperglycemia and dehydration, hyperpyrexia, and gastrointestinal irritation and hemorrhages. Restlessness, vertigo, and tremor will occur, and the patients will suffer with hallucinations and convulsions. These are the signs and symptoms of the acute salicylate intoxication. And with the toxic doses, there will be respiratory center depression will occur, and this will increases the carbon dioxide production, and it will leads to the metabolic acidosis. At higher doses, the respiratory center is depressed, and the compensated respiratory alkalosis mechanism is disturbed, and there will not be any compensated respiratory alkalosis. So it will leads to metabolic acidosis, and there will be derangement of the carbohydrate metabolism. Because of the derangement of the carbohydrate metabolism, there will be accumulation of the pyruvic acid, lactic acid, and acetoacetic acid will occur. All these will result in the metabolic acidosis at toxic doses. And coming to the how will you treat the salicylate poisoning? What is the management of the salicylate poisoning? You have to hospitalize the patient, and first you have to give the activated charcoal, that is 50 grams orally, and we have to correct the hypothermia by tepid sponging. At higher doses, the aspirin will cause the hyperthermia, and this hyperthermia is not controlled by the anti-inflammatory drugs. So we have to correct the hyperthermia by tepid sponging, and we have to treat the dehydration with the 5% dextrose solution. And because of the hypokalemia and acid-base disturbance and ketoacidosis, we have to give the potassium supplements and sodium bicarbonate to alkalization of the body fluids. And because it is acidic drug, alkalization of the urine will potentiate the excretion of the drug. So we have to increase the excretion of the aspirin by alkalization of the urine by giving sodium bicarbonate intravenously. And to avoid the bleeding disorders, we have to give the vitamin K, and we have to give the blood transfusion and exchange transfusion in very small children. Coming to the preparations and doses of the aspirin. Aspirin is available as tablets, that is 300 milligrams tablets, and it is also available as soluble tablets. Aspirin soluble tablets 300 milligrams and 30 milligrams of the citric acid and 100 milligrams of the calcium carbonate and 3 milligrams of the saccharin sodium. This calcium citrate, it helps in the dissolution of the aspirin, and this calcium citrate, it dissolves the aspirin and forming the calcium acetyl salicylate. And the other preparation is buffered aspirin tablets. So these are available in combination with the antacid. Aspirin and antacid combinations. And the other preparation is lysine acetyl salicylate. It is only parenterally, that is IV. It is an IV preparation. And coming to the other preparation, it is available as ointment, that is salicylic acid ointment, 2 to 6% salicylic acid weight by weight. And also it is available as Whitfield ointment, that is 6% benzoic acid and 3% salicylic acid. This is the combination of the Whitfield's ointment. And this salicylate, these salicylates, they are available as methyl salicylate in peanut oil and 50% methyl salicylate in white beeswax and hydrous wool fat. So the methyl salicylate, the other name for the methyl salicylate is oil of wintergreen. And coming to the other preparation, sodium salicylate tablets as 500 milligrams. These are administered with alkali. And succisyl fort containing sodium salicylate 500 milligrams and sodium succinate 300 milligrams. Coming to the, these are the dose of the aspirin used for in treatment of rheumatic fever is 5 to 10 grams per day. Whereas for the intermittent pain, it is used in 500 milligrams to 2 grams per day. And coming to the drug interactions, there are two types of drug interactions, pharmacokinetic interactions and pharmacodynamic interactions. Because it is the acidic drug and it binds with the plasma proteins, the other drugs which are bound to the plasma proteins are competed with the aspirin, and it is aspirin, it will displace the drugs like oral anticoagulants, sulfonylureas and phenytoin and warfarin from the protein binding sites and inhibits the metabolism of the these oral anticoagulants, sulfonylureas, phenytoin and warfarin. And it inhibits the excretion of the lithium, digoxin, methotrexate and aminoglycoside antibiotics. These are the pharmacokinetics, kinetic drug interactions. And coming to the pharmacodynamic drug interactions, aspirin, it reduces the therapeutic effect of the diuretics. The natriuresis caused by the diuretics are inhibited by the aspirin, and it will inhibit the antihypertensive effect of the AC inhibitors and beta blockers. Why? Because these NSAIDs, they will cause the, there will be water, sodium and potassium retention of sodium, potassium and water, and there will be increased intravascular compartment, increase in the fluid volume of the intravascular compartment. So the antihypertensive effect of AC inhibitors and beta blockers are reduced by the aspirin, and it increases the toxicity of the GI bleeding due to anticoagulants, corticosteroids and ethanol. Corticosteroids and ethanol, they will cause the gastritis, and whereas anticoagulants, they will increases the bleeding time. So these aspirin, it will increase the toxicity of the anticoagulants, corticosteroids and ethanol, and it will increases the hypoglycemia due to sulfonylureas. Aspirin at lower doses, it causes the hypoglycemia, and if it is taken along with sulfonylureas, it increases the toxicity of the sulfonylureas, causes hypoglycemia. And coming to the therapeutic uses, because of its analgesic, anti-inflammatory activity, this aspirin is used in the treatment of rheumatoid arthritis, spondylitis, and osteoarthritis. But in osteoarthritis, the preferable drug is paracetamol. Why? Because there is no inflammation in inflammatory cells present in osteoarthritis. So, paracetamol is the better drug to use in osteoarthritis. And for relief of pain and pyrexia, the analgesic dose is less when compared to the anti-inflammatory dose. And in rheumatic fever and post myocardial infarction and unstable angina and post-stroke, because of its anti-thrombotic activity, that is antiplatelet activity, it is used in the treatment of the post myocardial infarction, unstable angina and stroke, and for the closure of the patent ductus arteriosus. Because of the inhibition of the prostaglandins, this aspirin, it is useful in the treatment of the patent ductus arteriosus if it closes within 2 months after the delivery. And other uses are, it is used for flushing and pruritus due to niacin. This niacin, niacin causes the release of the prostaglandins in the skin. So this aspirin, it will inhibit the prostaglandins released by the skin and used for the flushing and pruritus due to niacin. And it is also used in the treatment of the cough due to ACE inhibitors. ACE inhibitors causes the dry cough because of the increased levels of the bradykinins. So aspirin, apart from inhibiting cyclooxygenase pathway, it also inhibits the lipooxygenase pathway. So it is used in the treatment of the dry cough because of the ACE inhibitors. And systemic mastocytosis. As mast cells are more in bone in systemic mastocytosis. So this aspirin, because of its anti-inflammatory activity, it is used in the treatment of the systemic mastocytosis. And in familial adenomatous polyposis, it is found in young people, adolescent people, and this will leads to the predisposing factor for the colonic cancer. In colonic cancer, the COX-2 enzyme is, the presence of the COX-2 enzyme concentration is more in colonic cancer. So aspirin can be used as preventive measure in familial adenomatous polyposis and for the prevention of the colon cancer and pregnancy-induced hypertension. Previously, it is used as the tocolytic to relax, for the relaxation of the uterus as tocolytic in prevention of the premature labor. Nowadays, it is not used because of the availability of the better drugs. And it is also used to prevent the prognosis of the Alzheimer's. Aspirin is having role in the Alzheimer's disease. It inhibits the prognosis of the Alzheimer's. So it is used for the prevention of the progression of the Alzheimer's disease. And it is also used in the Kawasaki disease. And what are the topical uses of the salicylates? Methyl salicylate or oil of wintergreen. It is used in the muscle and joint pains. It acts as the counter irritant. And the acetyl salicylic acid, because of its keratolytic activity, it is used to treat the corn. And salicylic acid and benzoic acid combination is used for the treatment of the epidermophytosis. And trolamine salicylate is used as the analgesic and sunscreen used in the cosmetics. And the mesalmine or mesalgin, It is 5 amino salicylic acid, and this mesalamine is used in the treatment of the inflammatory bowel disease. And with this, I have completed the first session, and the remaining drugs I will complete in the next class. Go through the topic, and you are having any doubts, please ask me.